Alrighty, how's it going everybody? This is engineering major, philosophy minor back here for another video. Today I thought I would give you guys a little rundown of what my own personal hygiene tips are that have what I think have been proven to be pretty effective at preventing me from getting sick with things like the cold or the flu. A lot of these things are also in common with what the CDC and other health organizations have recommended to do to avoid coronavirus. Now, I thought I'd make this video today because obviously there has been a lot of what I would consider to be very sensational news coverage about the current situation with coronavirus in the US. And of course, what is happening in places like California and unfortunately is even happening in more conservative states like Texas is there is a reinstitution of lockdowns, there is mandatory mask wearing. There are a lot of things that I personally feel like, and this is how I've felt from the beginning, that really should be the responsibility of the individual and not really the responsibility of the government to enforce. Now, just a little background about me. I have been a pretty big germaphobe for almost my entire life, long before coronavirus even existed. What I'm going to share with you guys today is pretty much the routine that I've followed for, I want to say, at least the last 8 years of my life. There have been modifications made to this to make things easier or make it less rigorous, and then other areas where I have made it more rigorous. Anyway, that's just the engineer in me trying to kind of optimize the process. But I want to get into this right now, and the point that I want to make with this is I think that a lot of you guys, when you see what my hygienic routine is, you're going to look at it and be like, oh my God, that's absolutely untenable. And I totally understand that. This is not for everybody. And especially if you have kids, a lot of this stuff becomes almost impossible. The point is that you as an individual should make the choice to do this. It's up to you as the individual to assess what your risks are and also implement for yourself what you think is the best mitigation of those risks. Also, what I'm going to present today from my example of my own personal life is not 100% effective. All it does is reduce risk. And so when we start talking about the government coming in and forcing everybody to stay inside again, or forcing people out of work, or forcing people to do this, and that, I personally think that it's wrong. And the reason why I think that it's wrong is because I think that we need to trust the individual to make the best decisions for them about how they want to manage their risks in their life. Now, obviously, if somebody is being intentionally discourteous, like purposefully coughing on people, intentionally going outside when they're sick, that is the time when, in my opinion, the law or the government can come in and intervene, because those people would be deliberately and intentionally putting others at risk. But for people who are just law-abiding and living their everyday lives and don't necessarily want to follow precautions like what I'm going to talk about with you guys that I do, I don't really think the government has a role in coming in and controlling that stuff. And I don't necessarily think that when the government does come in and try to control that stuff, they really do a good job at actually mitigating risk, especially with the masks. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So let's take a look. I put together this little Word document, and this summarizes from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. I called this my everyday life to avoid getting sick. I'm also sure that I'm missing things. Like I said, I've been doing this for a really long time. It's become kind of second nature for me. Now, in this list, you're going to see that at minimum I wash my hands about 14 times a day. Now, I know for a lot of you that's going to seem friggin' crazy, right? And that's because it is crazy, but I don't want to get sick, right? For me, not that I have a pre-existing condition or I'm immunocompromised or anything like that, but I just don't want to miss work. I like going to work. I like showing up to work. I've been going to work since the lockdown started. So really fast, before I get into this, let me just show you guys what I think a good solid hand washing looks like. Roll that clip. Alright guys, so I'm going to demonstrate for you guys what I do for a nice, thorough hand washing. First things first, when I turn on the water, you guys are going to think this is completely crazy, but when I turn on the water, I actually don't just grab completely with this portion of my hand right here. I actually will use the back of my hand because that does not touch as much stuff, and I'll try to touch the handle as minimally as possible. I'm going to turn that on, some water going. This is how I wash my hands every time I wash my hands. Not longer than this, but not shorter than this either. Get some soap on there, give a nice scrub, get a tiny bit more water on there, rinse off. Now I'm actually going to use the back of my hand to turn off the faucet as well. Dry the hands off. Good to go. So I wake up. I do not look at my phone or touch my phone unless my phone was cleaned from the night before. The way I clean my phone off is I wash it off in the sink or I rub it down with isopropyl alcohol. Now, do not wash your phone off in the sink if your phone is not water resistant. I happen to have an iPhone which is water resistant. It can handle water being applied to the outside and some mild scrubbing going on with it. I don't really use soap. The reason I don't use soap is because the iPhone is obviously a plastic surface or a glass surface, and it's not easy for germs to get in little crevices in there like they can in cloth, for example, like a mask. So I think it's adequate to just simply wash it off in the sink. Moving on, I do not touch my keys, wallet, sunglasses, or anything that I contact regularly with unwashed hands. So right now my keys and my wallet, my sunglasses are sitting in a designated spot that I have here for things that I do not touch, and if I have to touch those things, I wash my hands before doing anything else, basically. I wash my hands before brushing my teeth. After I brush my teeth, I grab my things, I go into the kitchen, and I'm now going to put my lunch together for the day. I wash my hands before I put my lunch together. I wash my hands if during that process I end up touching anything that isn't my food or clean household surfaces like the refrigerator handle or cabinet handles. I get my things to drive to work. I never touch my face until I have the opportunity to wash my hands again. I don't scratch my eyebrow. I don't grab my nose. I don't wipe my mouth. I don't touch my cheeks. My hands are on the steering wheel or on the shifter. Yeah, never touch my face. And that's pretty hard to do, actually, when you really start to think about how often you touch your face. When I arrive at work, I put my backpack in a designated spot. I put my wallet, my keys, my cell phone in a designated spot before touching my computer or normal workspace. I then go to the break room and I wash my hands. That's going to be at minimum the 4th hand wash that I've done in the day. I sanitize my phone with isopropyl alcohol. Now, everything highlighted in yellow is where I wash my hands, and everything highlighted in blue is where I have to do something involving the mask. In this case, I have a mask waiting for me at my desk. I don't wear it. I don't wear it when I'm in my car on the way to driving to work. The only time I will wear a mask in the car is if I have to bring an extra one to go to the gym at the end of the day. Now, the reason why I don't do that is because there's a whole process involved with taking on and off the mask, as you're going to see in a later section. I also put in parentheses here, I've never used masks before regularly like this. In my opinion, it's pointless. The reason why is because all it does is it encourages people to touch their face. Okay? Now, I will grant that if you are around someone who's sick and they're coughing and sneezing, you're probably going to get a little bit of protection from that. If you yourself are coughing or sneezing, it is going to prevent particles from coming out. But let's say that I'm wearing my mask and then I pass someone on the street who's sick and happens to sneeze or cough, and that material gets on the outside of the mask. I'm not going to breathe it in right away probably, but let's say that I have to adjust my mask. I touch that spot, and then I'm touching my nose and my mouth and adjusting the mask. I mean, and people do that stuff all the time. Now, I'm not saying you're a bad person if you do that, and I'm not calling anybody out. I totally get that it's almost impossible not to, right? But that's kind of the point of why I'm making this video. So let's go on. I never touch the mask with unwashed hands. My mask is always placed with the clean side up for brief moments or folded into a Ziploc bag where it never, where the outside of the mask never touches the inside. So my mask, I always place it, if I'm placing it on a surface, I place it like this. Why? Because if I place the surface that touches my face, this side down on something, and that picks something up, and then I put it on my face, well, I've just infected myself, right? Potentially. Also, if I take this and I mash it up into a little ball to the point that the inside here touches the outside, well, there might be stuff on the outside that then gets on the inside, which I then put directly onto my face. So you don't want to do that. So what I like to do is I like to fold it in half, kind of hot dog style like this, so that the inside of the mask is always only touching the inside of the mask and the outside of the mask is not touching anything else. And then I stick that in a Ziploc bag. Now let's say I'm doing my work and I have to go leave my desk to talk to somebody, to obtain something from somewhere, to go to the lab, or to go to the bathroom. I place my mask on using as little surface area of my hands as possible. And I just want to pause here for a second and explain something. When I'm sitting at my desk, I'm not sitting there with my mask on. Why? Because I'm constantly drinking my water, or I'm getting things to eat. I don't ever eat with my hands, I eat with utensils. If somebody comes by, I will put on my mask out of courtesy. If I'm going to walk around the office, I'm going to put on my mask out of courtesy. But if I'm not interacting with anybody, there's no one around, I'm not going to wear my mask. This gets back to it should be up to the individual to decide what their level of risk is, and also try to be as courteous as possible to others. Okay, so I put my mask on using as little surface area of my hands as possible. So I don't actually touch this area of the mask. I'm touching it right now because my hands are clean and this mask is clean. But usually what I do is I actually use my pinkies, bring this under my chin, up over my ears like that. I try not even to touch my ears with my hands, okay? At this point, the mask is on. I will never touch the outside of my mask with unwashed hands. I won't even touch my face. If I need to adjust the mask, I'll use, again, as little surface area on my hands as possible, and I will adjust away from my mouth and nose if I need to do that. So let's say the mask is slipping down, it's getting annoying, now all of a sudden it's down here, like on this part of my nose, and I can tell it's going to fall off immediately. I will come back with my pinkies and just readjust that to there. Or I will very carefully grab the outside here where it's furrowed. Notice that my nose is here, my mouth is here, but I'm grabbing here, and I will adjust the mask that way. But I really try hard not to do that. So the best way to avoid having to do that is make sure that the metal thing up here is properly adjusted to your nose. And then there's another little thing. Some of the masks actually have an aluminum strip of metal up here. You can tell that this one's actually steel because you can see there's maybe some rust starting to kind of form. I don't know if you can see it, but there's some rust coming in there. That's because I've been washing with water. Now, the crummy thing about the aluminum ones is, quick little engineering fun fact, aluminum is 3 times more flexible than steel. So what happens with aluminum is it's really flexible here, and then when the mask starts getting pushed and pulled around, the bend that you have put in the mask actually starts to unravel itself. So I'm going to take my mask off. Again, I'm using my pinkies. I don't touch my face, anything. Put it face down. Notice how arduous of a process that is, all right? when I go to work, most people are touching their mask everywhere and taking it on and putting it wherever, bundling up in a ball, put it in their purse, put it in their pocket, putting it back on their face. Then people are like, "Oh, I'm sick of using the mask." They just put it down here and they don't even utilize it. They're just talking out in the open. I mean, look, if you end up doing that stuff, I don't blame you, man. It's a pain. It's a pain in the butt. So now that we've gotten through the mask portion of this, I finally leave my desk. I always wash my hands before returning to my desk, even if I didn't touch anything. Now, is that probably a little bit neurotic of me? Yes. Do I want to get sick? No. If you personally don't want to wash your hands before leaving your desk, do I think that you should be mandated by the government to do so? No. You can do whatever you want. You decide for yourself what risk you want to take. Unfortunately, in these times, if you don't wash your hands, that is a risk. It's up to you whether or not you want to take it. And it's up to you whether or not you want to be courteous to others. Obviously, I like to be courteous to others, so I'm going to wash my hands frequently. Let's say that instead of just leaving my desk, I have to go to the bathroom. I never use my phone or touch my face when I'm in the bathroom. I hear people in the bathroom stalls using their phones, people coming into the bathroom talking on their phones all the time. Personally, I think that that's gross, but you are your own free person. If you want to do that, you can go ahead. I'm just letting you know that it's another way that you can bring germs that are on surfaces onto your phone and just directly next to your face or onto your hands and then onto your face. Now, just really fast, here's a note on contact tracing. So the thing about contact tracing is the government wants to hire, a bunch of people to basically spy and tell on other people if they're not wearing their mask or if they come in contact with certain other individuals or whatever the case may be, right? But we've just talked about in my little own personal hygiene thing how much effort I go through to avoid touching my face and getting other objects, getting cross-contaminated with other objects and things of that nature. So let's say that you come in contact with like 20 people in one day and you're wearing your mask even, and you touch like 50 surfaces and you are not very diligent about washing your hands, and this is not to be hypercritical of anyone, this is just to say what the reality might be. How is a government contact tracer ever going to be able to make the determination of whether or not you got, let's say you become infected with coronavirus? How are they ever going to make the determination of whether or not it was from coming in contact with somebody who actually had it, or whether or not it was from somebody who was infected touching a surface that you then touched, that you then infected yourself basically with the virus? It just doesn't make any sense. So when you guys are out there, voting for policy or dreaming up ways to, stop the spread or whatever, just keep in mind that whatever you do, your taxpayer money is going to go towards funding that thing. Now, do you really want to fund contact tracers that probably can't do anything? That probably can't actually gather any reasonable information? I'm just saying, it's some food for thought. Okay, so where were we here? We were talking about bathroom. I never use my phone or touch my face when I'm in the bathroom. I utilize seat covers if necessary. I don't really know if that's relevant to this. Regardless of whether or not I go number one or number two, I wash my hands in the bathroom after using the bathroom. Now, I have to touch the door handle on the way out. Usually I will use a tissue to do that, but I will wash my hands again in the break room before returning to my desk. Part of the reason why I do that is because in my bathroom at work, which might be similar to yours, it's the push button type sink. It's not the laser wireless sink. It's not faucet handles. It's the push button. So I've got to push that button, touch something, and there's not really an easy way to do that with towels. So I go to the break room again, I wash my hands again, and then I can use a towel to turn off that faucet. Or I can use the back of my hand to lightly brush that faucet closed, and this is a portion of my hand that never really touches my face if I end up touching my face back at my desk. Do I seem crazy to you guys yet, or what? Once I get back to my desk, I will remove my mask with as little hand surface area as possible. We talked about that using the pinkies. Now, depending on how neurotic I feel, I might even splash a little bit of rubbing alcohol or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer on my hands because I've just touched my mask, which is I've been wearing it around all over the place and might have stuff on it. This is on a non-business trip day. When I go on a business trip, man, it's brutal. Okay, so I've finished my work, and I leave work to either go home or go to the gym. If I'm going to the gym, I will change into my clothes in the bathroom, and I will use my bathroom steps above after I have changed. So that's another 2 hand washes. Once I have changed and I have washed my hands, I will place my mask on, as we've talked about. Now, at this point, I will never remove the mask until I get home. Why? Because when I go to the gym, obviously I'm going to be touching other equipment. I'm going to be in my car touching things in my car. I'm going to be rolling around on the floor doing ab exercises. I'm going to be doing all this crap. I never remove the mask until I get home. Now, whether or not I came from the gym or I came from work, when I get home, I do not touch any surfaces in my house before washing my hands. What does that mean? I walk in the door, I take off my shoes so I don't track a bunch of stuff through the house. I then place my backpack in my designated backpack area. I place my wallet, my phone, my keys, and my sunglasses over there. As I talked about earlier, they always stay over there. Then I wash my hands. Then I clean my phone. Now my phone can be placed in other areas that are like clean areas. I will then remove my mask if I'm wearing it. I will then wash my mask, and then once my mask is washed, I will remove my dirty clothes, and then I will immediately shower. Now, I want to talk for a second about washing the mask. I take my mask and I just run it under warm water and I kind of scrub it out. I don't really use any soap because I don't really want to be breathing in soap smell the entire time I have it on. And to be honest with you guys, I don't even know if this is a sufficient washing technique as recommended by the CDC or any other health institution. All I know is this: masks are hard to come by these days. So I'm not throwing my mask out after every use, which if you were to observe what happens in a doctor's office, in the emergency room, in a hospital, in food service industries where they have to wear a mask anyway, or a hair thing, or wear gloves, the masks are meant to be disposed of at very specific points in time. They're not supposed to be used over and over and over again, like how the government right now, Gavin Newsom in California, cough cough, is mandating that they get used. Okay? So, when you take this around and outside and all that stuff, I suggest that you make sure you wash it. But again, that's a suggestion. It is up to you to determine your own risk. Eating. As mentioned earlier, I will wash my hands again. I wash my hands before eating always, no matter what, even if I know I've only touched clean surfaces. So for example, I'm here recording this video right now. I'll probably want to eat soon. Despite the fact that I have made sure that my keyboard and my mouse and everything and my mask is washed and my hands are clean, I will wash my hands before I eat, even if I'm not eating with my hands. When I go to bed, I will wash my hands again before brushing my teeth. I'll brush the teeth. If I encounter any other miscellaneous reasons to wash my hands, I'll wash my hands again. And this typically happens 2 or 3 times before I go to bed. So here are some miscellaneous opportunities that I will wash my hands at home. Opportunities And really, it's actually just a time burden. But hey, I don't really want to get sick, so this is what I do. If I handle dirty laundry, I wash my hands. If I take out the trash, I wash my hands. If I touch the front door handle, I will wash my hands. If I go for a walk outside and don't touch anything, I will still wash my hands when I get back inside. I wash my hands after leaving the house for any reason. Of course, when I leave the house and I need to go somewhere where I wear a mask, I have to follow the mask on and off practices. After cleaning or sanitizing surfaces, I'll wash my hands. Before and after handling raw meat, that should be a no-brainer. I wash my hands. The list can go on from there. Now, remember, we were talking about the mask. Once the mask is involved, it becomes that much more complicated. So now I'm going to tell you guys what my opinion really is on the mask. I personally think that the mask introduces a lot more risk than it introduces reward. As we just talked about throughout this entire thing, you always have to make sure your hands are clean. People don't always do that. You always need to make sure that you're putting on the mask the right way. People aren't always able to do that. You always need to make sure that your mask is resting in a place where it's not touching anything that's contaminated. It's difficult to do that. Let's see here. If you keep having to adjust your mask and touch your face, like you're just adding additional risk that way. Okay? So my opinion on the masks is if you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, by all means, wear it. But what I think is the mask should only be worn if you yourself are exhibiting symptoms, and that's it. Because everybody else is walking around wearing the mask and touching their face and adjusting it and not using it correctly. And in my opinion, it just introduces much more risk. The most sensible way to handle this, in my opinion, is that every individual decides for themselves what amount of risk they want to take. And if you're sick, please wear your mask out of courtesy for others. In fact, if you're sick, you should really be quarantining yourself out of courtesy for others. All right. So you guys saw my own personal hygiene thing, and I know that a lot of you guys are going to be looking at that like, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous, man. Dear engineering major, philosophy minor, I'm never going to go through that extent. And you know what? If you say that to me or you leave that in the comment below, more power to you, brother or sister. These are the things that I do because I take responsibility for my own personal health and my own personal hygiene. I understand what the risks are. I take action to mitigate the risk. The risk is never going to be zero. It just never will. Okay? But I decide for myself what I want to do, and I believe that you should decide for yourself what you want to do as long as you're not intentionally or deliberately making the risk greater for me. And that's why I have a really big problem with the government getting involved in this, all right? Because you and I spend tax money so that the government can enforce all these random rules that basically is them cramming down your throat that they know what your risk is better than you do. And they're going to use my money and your money to enforce that on everybody else. So that being said, personally, this is just my opinion. I think that the lockdowns, I was okay with it for the first 15 days. But at the end of the day, when it started lasting 30 days, 2 months, almost 3 months now, I think it was the biggest mistake that America has ever made. And now you've got all these people unemployed and fighting for cans of food at the food bank, and that is not to diminish the fact that there has been a lot of death as related to this virus. That's obviously very tragic. My parents are in the age range where they're kind of at risk. My grandmother especially is in the age range where she is very at risk. But each of us assess the risk individually for ourselves, and we try to be courteous for others. And obviously, if I get sick, I'm not going to be going over to grandma's house trying to say hello and trying to get, hugs and kisses. All right? Now that I've said all that, I do want to show you guys some statistics here. So there are 3 counties worth of statistics that I'm going to show you guys. One is San Diego County, where I live. One is Santa Clara County, where I used to live. And one is LA County. San Diego, we've got 19,371 cases, 422 deaths. I'm going to click this summary of County of San Diego deaths by demographics, which I have pulled up right here already. If I take ages 70 to 80 plus years, that's 23.2 plus 48.6. That's about 80. That's almost about 75% of all deaths have been in the age 70 and above. If I include 60 and above, then look at that. Let's just do the calculation. 16.1 plus 23.2 plus 48.6. That's almost 90% of deaths have been people aged 60 and above. Let's look at another statistic. So I'm in the age bracket of 30 to 39 years. There have been 4 deaths. Now, this demographic thing doesn't include pre-existing conditions or comorbidities. So 4 deaths, let's go here, 3,672 cases, 4 divided by 3,672, mortality rate of 0.1%. Okay? Now, another important thing. I don't know about you guys, but every time that I've gotten the flu in the past in my life, which has happened to me a handful of times, I recognize that coronavirus is different than the flu and it's different than the common cold, but I don't want to talk about comparing medical outcomes. What I want to talk about is getting tested for the flu. Not once in my entire life have I ever been tested for the flu, but I have been very sick with the flu before in my life. So how many people in the age range of 0 to 39 years old, maybe even up to 50 years old, how many of those people do you think got a little bit sick? And I should say, how many people in addition to what's reported here do you think got a little bit sick and said, I don't need to get tested. I'm not going in the hospital, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so that being said, this case count is probably a hell of a lot higher than what they're actually reporting. So let's look at the other county. So this is LA County. For some reason, this website is glitching out on me. But what you do have to do here is you can actually download the data to a spreadsheet. So that's what I've done here. Let's look at 41 to 65 and 65 and older, 22% and 74% respectively. That sums to 96.8% of LA County's deaths have been age 41 and above. And again, these don't account for comorbidities or anything. Let's now look at Santa Clara County. Actually, only 166 deaths in Santa Clara County. That's actually pretty impressive. But let's look at the deaths by age. Age 70 and above. Similar story here. Or sorry, let's do age 60 and above because that's kind of comparable to what we've been looking at before. 15.7 plus 24.7 plus 22.3 plus 20.5. 83.2% of deaths have been age 60 and above. Okay, so what was the point of me sharing all those statistics? The government has really no business at this point coming in and trying to dictate the way that we all live our lives. The best thing that we can do right now is for each individual, think about what your risk factors are, think about what you can do to reduce your own individual risk, and think about what you can do to be a good neighbor, a good fellow citizen, and be courteous and respectful to others. At the end of the day, that's all you can do, because you're not stopping this thing, okay? It spreads from arbitrary person-to-person contact and on surfaces. Those are two means of transmission that are absolutely impossible to stop and absolutely impossible to track. It just is what it is. So, all that being said, guys, thanks for watching the video. Leave comments below if you agree or if you disagree. Yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.